Dr. Pieczenik, thanks for joining us to try to give us your take or your sources on what's happening.
Well, let's go back a few years, Alex. Years ago, I told you I was asked if I could be monitored from above. And I said, of course, I have no problem with it. You guys have been monitoring me for years. You didn't have to announce it. But I have no problem. I understand why you're doing it. I have no issue with it. You're not going to repress my speech, nor are you going to repress or suppress Alex Jones' speech or anybody else's speech. Let's get some historical facts in perspective before everybody starts to become unfolded here. And I'm not talking about you, Alex. First of all, the notion of suppressing and surveying American speech goes back to the times of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the absolute greatest liberal president we've had, and a great president. He was told by both Congress and the Supreme Court, you cannot survey in any way the electronic emissions or signal intelligence that comes from the American public, i.e. the telephones or anything else. He said, yes, yes, but he ran all of them and basically had a covert surveillance of every American, and at the same time, this great liberal incarcerated American Germans, American Italians, and American Japanese. So the history of surveillance in this country goes back to the time of FDR. It increased when the National Security Agency came in 1948, 49. A bill was passed, and every American telephone wire literally went through the National Security Agency. So to think that we have not been surveyed or in any way monitored is absolutely both childish and absurd. The notion,
and of course, we got our model from the OSS and the British that were doing it in real time as well.
That's correct. I mean, in effect, we were in World War II, and then there was the Cold War, and rightfully or wrongfully, this was in place because this was the way you took care of the Republic.
But to be clear, they didn't sit there and listen to everybody. All the wires went through. Once they had Humet that somebody was a German agent or something, then they started watching them.
Right, that's correct. In other words, but they had the surveillance capability, which was not sanctioned by the Supreme Court or the Congress.
Sure, so we have this outside of the Constitution system, and for them to deny it's going on when they said they were surveilling Trump with it, it's just crazy.
Well, but that's okay. What we're falling into again, and with all due respect, Alex, this is distraction and denial. The real issues that are coming to the forefront is, once again, we have the neocons coming in. And what am I talking about? Right now, in front of the Judiciary Committee is Neil Gorsuch, a very decent man who looks like he's been perfect. His moral integrity seems above board, went to Harvard, summa cum laude, then had a PhD at Oxford. But then when I closely look at his record, I have a major, major problem with it. In a 14-month period during the time of 2005, when he worked directly for Attorney General Gonzalez, Gorsuch, initiated and enhanced several programs which were totally illegal and immoral. First was the enhancement of interrogation. Secondly was rendition. Thirdly was torture. He was key to the torture, implementation, and legitimacy of using torture against so-called terrorists. Now remember, this comes after 9/11. So what do we have here? We have a so-called decent Coloradan who tells you about how humble he is, but really he's quite bright. And at the same time, he goes to Georgetown Preparatory School, which happens to be a Jesuit school. I have nothing against Jesuits, but clearly he learns how to follow orders. And in this case, I must say, Dianne Feinstein, as much as I don't agree with her most of the time, was correct to press in on the key issue, because the moral integrity of Neil Gorsuch does not lie in 48 years of his life. It lies in the 14 months that he was a co-conspirator with Bush, Cheney, and Wolfowitz, and Condoleezza Rice and Romney to implement Patriots Act, increased terrorism, and increased interrogation. That makes him an amoral man. From that point on, I have a question that this man cannot be a judge in the Supreme Court. Now, what is in fact happening? While you and I are talking about other issues, I'm still monitoring the rise and fall of the neocons. As you know, we were successful in stopping John Bolton from coming in as a key player in State Department. Yet today, he went into the White House. Whether Trump realizes this or not, or he understands what I'm saying, or a group of us who are saying, we're not dilettantes, we're not somebody who has an axe to grind, but there will be no neocons in the White House or in the State Department. Let me repeat it again so Trump and his team understands this. And Tillerson understands this. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the CEO of a $500 billion corporation like Mobil Oil. You do not threaten North Korea under any condition because you have a moron like John Bolton, who's never been in military, who was afraid to join our military and publicly said, I was scared to get killed in the rice paddies of Vietnam.
Sure, so breaking this down, though, what do you make of the Democrats? That's my question. You get to what you want in a minute, but I'm asking, they are in a I get it's a distraction, but they're literally running around saying, kill the president, and they're not getting in trouble.
Alex, they're not relevant. Right now, the Democrats are not relevant. The only thing they're relevant to do, and I'm going back to this point, they cannot have neoconservatives coming in. You can't have the 9/11.
So you're saying the neocons are the dangerous group, and Trump can't appease them.
Dangerous group. Dianne Feinstein is not dangerous. Nancy Pelosi is not dangerous. Michael Moore is not dangerous. They've all been neutralized. What happened is, thanks to you and the group and those of us who kept the revolution going, the neocons who've been cowards and deprecated you, me, and Trump, snuck back in like a bunch of rats, and they're back in the White House. And instead of focusing on the neoconservative rise, which leads with Gorsuch, Bolton, Abrams, all of whom have no right to come back into the administration. They were cowards. They were people who...
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I understand that. What do the neocons want? And then looking at what's happening with Korea, what's going on with China and the South China Sea?
Alex, listen to me. I know you don't like it right now. We're not on the same wavelength. The neocons want America to go to war.
No, I don't want to go to war. It's not that I disagree with you. I'm trying to get you on the subject I'm asking. Go ahead.
Excuse me. North Korea has 2.2 million men on the DMZ, on the demilitarized zone. We are 30 miles away from Seoul. If John Bolton has his way, he'd have no problem with taking preemptive action, whatever that means, because he's never been in the military. He has no strategy or tactics. And 2.2 million North Koreans will swarm over the DMZ and literally go in hours right into Seoul.
Well, sure. So the only action is, if they try to load atomics on the missiles, if you want to go to war, is you got to preemptively nuke North Korea, their capital. You got to hit that whole DMZ line and then tell China, everybody else, ultimatum. If you try something, Trump's got to deal with Russia. We're going to joint nuke China. And then I guess they pop up their submarines and nuke the West Coast.
Alex, remember, I've been in the business of nuclear deterrence. We took it down. We had the Soviet Union.
I know, but I mean, that's the public attack plan. I mean, do you think North Korea will actually take that bluff with this guy running it?
I don't. North Korea is not interested in a bluff. North Korea couldn't care less about a sanction. What North Korea will do is what's best for North Korea. Our preparation has to do with the tactical and strategic issues of how to deal with North Korea with other countries. That's what Bolton does.
No, I understand. You like Trump. You're glad he's in. You're upset to see neocons coming around, and you don't think the neocons have learned any lessons.
They've been destructive to the country. What have we done?
No, I'm not defending them. I can't stand the neocons. Okay, well, then what does Trump need to do?
We're not addressing the issue of why, in fact, we're repeating what we had under the Bush-Cheney administration and in the Obama
Okay, well, why did neocons keep taking over then?
Because they're there, and they're able to be incredibly, like snakes or like rats. They're on the ship. I'm not around in Washington. You're not around in Washington. They're able to co-opt the Conservative Party. They're funded by Shelley Adelson, or they're funded by the Mercers, or whoever it is.
What they do is they tell Trump and his weaker people, will be nice just as soon as Trump lets us run things. But then every time he lets them in, they leak information. That they are a group of rats. Perlman and all these people are just crazy. I mean, like, you know about Perlman, Prince of Darkness. He showed up at cocktail parties in the news and said, I kill lots of people. I'm manly. And then women run from him as if women want a guy to walk up and go, I'm a murderer. I kill people. That's not what women want. I mean, it's like he is totally, you look at how did a little pasty guy, looks like a raccoon, get in control of things? I mean, how does Bolton, with that big, ridiculous mustache. You're acting like I'm defending the neocons. I hate the neocons. Looks like he's like a, you know, like a big brush at the.
Well, I'll tell you what they do. They basically, they scurry away when it comes for time to come forth and do something that's morally right. They didn't support you. They didn't go after their own president. They weren't able to resign.
What are you talking about? They came after me with all their publications and tried to stop Trump.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about their publications. I'm talking about that they didn't go after the president of the United States.
No, I agree. Why is he going to let people in that were his enemies in the campaign?
Because he has no other alternative. I don't know why he's choosing them.
I'll tell you why. Because at every level, no one will appoint who he says. Everyone ignores his orders and says, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And he can't get anybody in. There's a total mutiny. That's what I'm telling you. He's got that State Department office running operations against him, saying everybody's a Russian agent. Well, what do you think of this claim that I'm getting directed by the GD Russians?
Well, it's absurd. You and I know that the Russians could care less, although they like you very much, and they happen to like me or fear me. It's not relevant. The fact that the Russians happen to be monitoring everybody, we're monitoring the Israelis.
Yeah, whoever gave them all these superpowers.
But that's exactly what happens. What I'm getting to, again, we're getting into the self-destructive force where we got into that problem with Bush Cheney. Trump has now congratulated Cheney for his support. And what we're getting is a president who we wanted up there and does not have judicious advice.
Well, I'll agree with you this. He did great on the jobs, great on the economy, great on his moves for the average person. Light years better than Hillary. Here's the problem. He's going with this health care bill that's another establishment screw job, not as bad as Obamacare. The argument is, well, there's a death spiral. We got to fix it. When his own party doesn't want it, his constituents don't want it. So Trump's starting to make mistakes.
That's correct. And what he needs are people like you or the people like myself who've been involved and were able to come out and able to take risks and able to create things. There's not one neocon who's ever served our country or built his own corporation. What I'm getting at is we're getting into self.
Well, let's tell folks who neocons are, because they hear me say this. You can pull it up in the Washington Post, New York Times 10 years ago. They were Trotskyites. Explain it.
Yeah, the neocons were created by Commentary Magazine, a man by the name of John Podhoretz, who's the father-in-law of Elliot Abrams. It happens to be, unfortunately, a great amount of Jews who were Trotskyites and avowed communists. The only thing they really understood was that we had to have revolution at every point in the progression of history. They were not pro-Americans. They avoided the draft. They were very cowardly when it came to the draft. Then at the time when...
And of course, they won't call that anti-Semitic because you're, you know, of course, have Jewish background as well.
I'm just telling you.
But it's not debated that the neocons are Jewish Trotskyites.
Yeah, they're Jewish Trotskyites. I mean, there's Zalmay Khalilzad, who's from Afghanistan. There's Steve Hadley, who's Christian. I mean, I can go down the whole list.
Yeah, there's a lot of Christian Zionists, and I'm not against Israel. My point is, what's wrong with the neocons? Because secretly, it keeps coming out, they're allied with radical Islam. They're allied with Saudi Arabia. That's my big issue with them.
What the neocons want is a constant state of war and a military-industrial complex where the United States makes certain that Israel be the focal point in the Middle East. That didn't work. Where we would get rid of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. That didn't work.
Sure, I know you're giving us the background. Here's the deal. Hundreds of publications are saying what I said 2 months ago. There is a soft coup operation, or a coup as the nation calls it, against Trump. They're just ignoring him. And I guess he thinks bringing these people in, they can get stuff done. Well, that's just letting them take over the highest post. So what do we do?
Well, what we did is, unfortunately, I have to kind of step back a bit. We put in Michael Flynn, who was able to, in many ways, get rid of some of those neocons. But unfortunately, I have generals in the Secretary of Defense position, McMaster, elsewhere, who've accepted the notion that we can put soldiers into harm's way when we have no strategy. We have no strategy in Syria. We have no strategy in Iraq. And once again, we're in Afghanistan. It's the 15th year. This is what the neocons...
Sure, isn't the strategy threatening to overthrow Saudi Arabia if they don't pull out their forces?
They're not going to be overthrowing Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabia is part of the funding of the neocon narrative.
That's what I just said. So if you want to shut down ISIS, you threaten to overthrow Saudi Arabia, ISIS will go home overnight.
I can go through the CIA right now and get you the people who created them, plus the neocons who were involved, plus the Mossad.
Okay, well, then how do you shut down ISIS?
It's easy. You reverse engineer how you created it. That was created by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It was created by the CIA. I go to Tenet. I go to the guys who created it. I do the interrogation. Then I find out who was involved. I'll find out where the money track comes from in Saudi Arabia and Israel, Jordan, UAE, and Dubai. It's not hard. You don't fight an enemy that you don't need to fight and was created by us.
No, I agree. So, I mean, couldn't you put pressure on Saudi Arabia and Qatar and others?
Pressure, that's all nonsense. The pressure doesn't mean anything because Saudi Arabia is literally like our cousin. They can't get close enough. They're fearful of us. If you want to get rid
No, I agree. So you're saying don't tell Saudi, our own shadow government still backing al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Trump doesn't know how to do it.
You don't go overseas when you can go home, and I can go right through the CIA and pull out every person who was involved, go right through the Saudi intelligence, go through Mossad, and I can get you every person involved in the neocons and 9/11 and put them on trial. That's not what's happening. In fact, what's happening is a repetition of the failures that occurred from 9/11 onward, and Trump now will be involved with that very issue. I don't care about Jared Kushner. He doesn't know what he's doing. I know.
I mean, another thing is Kushner. He's a good-looking guy, everything, but his own family gave him the money. What is this young guy in these meetings with Trump in every different meeting like he's the boss?
Well, the problem is Trump has to have somebody around him with whom he feels secure, whether it's Ivanka or Jared Kushner.
He likes his family.
That's his family. That's not my problem. My problem is that Jared Kushner...
But as a psychiatrist, what does that say about Trump that he always wants family around?
Let's say, on the nicer edge, I can say he loves his family. On a more sophisticated level, I would say he needs those who he feels comfortable with in order to give himself a kind of psychological barrier to deal with strangers. Is that unusual? No.
It's funny you say that. I don't know if you know the background on Trump. That's actually the thing is that...
John F. Kennedy had it with RFK. You know, I don't want to get into the psychiatry of the man. I understand the man. The problem isn't understanding him. The problem is the action that's initiated.
Well, he's overcome his... I'm not going to get into it. You know what, Doc, I'm not arguing with you today. I just know Hillary would destroy the country. I know Trump's not perfect. I see him kind of sliding back a little bit, and which I expected him to do. How could he he's already gotten heroic stuff done, but I agree with you. You know, all these neocons that want to start all these wars, it's just insane.
Let's start with one at a time. Gorsuch cannot be nominated for Supreme Court justice.
But he seems like a pretty conservative guy.
No, he's not a conservative.
All right, but when you talk about the neocons, almost none of them were ever in the military. They always want wars. They're always talking about nuclear war would be survivable. Let's have it. It really is a crazy mindset. And so I get what Dr. Steve Pieczenik's talking about here. And then I see this new Supreme Court justice. I think about if Hillary was in, who would we be getting? So just be clear. Why are you saying there's issues with this guy?
Let me put it this way. For many of the people in the audience, I would love them to see a film called Judgment at Nuremberg. But the Nuremberg trials were exactly about Judge Gorsuch. The question was asked by our prosecutors after the war, why were German Nazi judges who were very sane and normal and had huge degrees from America, Britain, and Germany able to initiate laws that were against the Jews, gays, whatever, and they were suppressed? And why were these decent people, and this judge is an extremely decent individual, but during a 14-month period, he cracked his decency and literally began to go into the fascist state. He thought it was good to initiate a suppression of freedom, a surveillance of what our normal freedoms are, increased, enhanced torture. He justified it. Went to Guantanamo, said this was the best thing he could have had. He wrote to the Council on Foreign Relations, and remember, I was there and then I left, that we should have a policy discussion on the need for torture. And so what happened during these 14 months was to reveal the underlying nature of this so-called decent American, who was not unlike many of the German judges who were decent German judges, but they followed orders. And the orders were to suppress American freedoms. He should have said, no, I'm a lawyer, but at this point, morality supersedes my job as a lawyer. He couldn't do that, and he didn't want to do that. And instead, he became this slimy, egregious individual, but very smooth. He had all the credentials he needed and worked his way through the conservative channels, through the Heritage Foundation, through the Federalist Foundation, until he looked as if he was cleaner than Macbeth's wife, when in fact, he was already morally compromised. When a man or a person is morally compromised, I don't care if they've been justified for 99 years. At that point, 9.1 years, they have a problem.
Well, let's back off of that for a minute. Just look at Trump. He has an authoritarian stripe down his back. The elite don't like him because he's not working with them. He's trying to empower the people. So I like Trump. But there is that stripe of authoritarianism. Yeah,
but Trump has never suppressed anybody's freedom. Trump has never invoked...
No, I agree. But you're saying this guy has.
This guy was not only suppressing, he was number 3 at the Justice Department, couldn't be better off, and couldn't thank Bush enough, Jr., that he was rewarded with a 10th Circuit Court in Colorado. Why Colorado? Because he came across with this bullshit narrative that he's one of the boys from Colorado, I'm 5th generation, when in fact he grew up in Washington, D.C. His mother was the first female director of the EPA. He went to a Tony boarding school, Georgetown Preparatory School, a Jesuit school, went to Columbia, did well, went to Harvard, did well, and then to kind of top off the topping on the cake, he went to Oxford and wrote some nonsensical thesis about why you don't have euthanasia and assisted suicide. This guy smells and reeks of the ability to slime his way up the political ladder. But at the moment of truth, at least with Cheney, I knew what Cheney was. He was a rat. He was a rat from day 1, and he was a rat from day 5, but he never changed his stripes. This guy, Gorsuch, was changing his stripes right and left, and then stood on a self-righteous step and said, what, me? I haven't done anything. I was just a lawyer. No, you were more than a lawyer. You were the perpetrator and the instigator and the facilitator of suppression of the state. That's called fascism. If it's fascism for a day, a week, or a year, that's still fascism. For that reason alone, he does not deserve to be Supreme Court Justice. There are many other conservative judges who
Well, looks like he's going to get confirmed. I mean, look, I understand the stuff went on under Bush. The guy followed orders, whatever. I mean, I get what you're saying. My issue is, can you imagine what Hillary was going to do if she got in with these judges?
I'm not worried about Hillary. We're not talking about Hillary. Hillary's off on another planet.
No, I understand. We're moving forward. We can't look at the past and judge things by that.
Looking forward, I can't put back in there the people who created the problems to begin with. You and I started.
Sure, I'm almost out of time. Let me shift gears back to Nunes. Yeah, you know, he's standing up and saying, yeah, they're spying on Trump. That's a good thing.
It's not a... Of course, there's. I told you 10 years ago.
No, we know. So what does it mean that the media would run this whole hoax that Trump's not being spied on?
It's, again, a distraction. I'm going back to you 100 times.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're a smart guy. Don't blind yourself just because you know this, that the public needs to know when they're up there saying we're liars, there's no surveillance. We have to expose it.
Well, I just said it. We have surveillance. But the key issue is the public doesn't know. We've got 500 Marines being put into Syria in a war that can't be won, in a battle that was not even planned out correctly in Raqqa. We have another...
But, I mean, Trump promised to knock them out. You don't think they can kill those guys?
He can't kill them. You don't kill so-called terrorists.
No, I get it. You turn off their command and control. It's you're saying the command and control is still inside the U.S. government. And then you so what does Trump do in 60 seconds?
I'm sorry, Alex. What's going on?
No, I mean, I just asked a question. What does Trump do then? You're saying you don't go militarily beat him. What do you do?
His generals, instead of having a meeting of 62 countries to find out how you go with ISIS, you sit down with McMaster, who knows better than this, and ask what the internal strategy is for taking apart the ISIS and how it came about through the Mossad, through...
No, I know, and who the leadership is and all that. So here's the question. Does Trump just get advice from his people? The generals follow orders and don't tell him stuff?
No, the generals give him the order. They tell him exactly what he wants to hear. He's not a strategist. He's never been in combat.
No, Trump tells... I know for a fact, Trump tells the commanders, the CIA, the Defense Department, all of them, he says, what's the best plan? He listens to him. He says, do it. Trump's actually says, just do it. So the claim that he's not, you know.
But I'm trying to tell you, Alex, the generals have failed in doing what they're supposed to do. And the reason is very simple. They were there in the first Iraq war, they failed. In the second Iraq war, they failed. They haven't won a war. They've been in battles, but not wars.
So they're ready to fight wars and aren't ready to use intelligence to cut it off at the head.
You got it. You use the basic premise of all wars is you win it by using the head, not by using guns.
I got it.
Put guns on the ground, particularly with the Marines. You got cannon fodder. I've got boys who just came back from Africa. They don't know what they were doing in Africa. They don't know why they were shooting at certain people. They don't know why we have troops in Eastern Africa.
I know. I understand. So you're saying it is literally just a defense contractor event.
Industrial complex again. We don't need $58 billion more, and in a budget that's already bloated to $600 billion. I have 888 generals and admirals, twice the amount I had in World War II. Yet in World War II, I won 2 wars with George Marshall and Eisenhower, and we never had as many generals.
All right, Dr. Pieczenik, always great to talk to you. StevePieczenik.com. Thank you.
Bye.